Hey, how's it going, guys? HonestlySarcastc with the Hyperloops here. So, I can't remember what we talked about during the last vlog, because, like, I have a lot of the Patreon premium content ones. But today, I'm going to talk kind of about the debate that's been constantly going on, with stuff being broken, too broken, needing nerfs, needing bans, etc., etc. So first I'll go over the cards that... Actually, no. First, I guess we'll talk about the subject a bit. So now, the big issue here is primarily is like there's a couple different ways to kind of view these cards, and I'll go over some of the cards in a bit. There is that they hamper the ability to build other decks. And that like Snoke is one of the big ones for that. Why would you play with Jabba when you can play with Snoke? Like, yeah, there's the color thing, there's a little bit of the tutor, but Jabba's gonna have to get like +2s. He has a 2 focus, but Snoke can just Snoke a resource side, and there goes his +2, and that's not even with his dice yet. Sure, if you don't have the extra point, like, yeah, that makes relevant sense. But like, let's say you're starting to build a deck, it's just like, all right, why would I choose some of these guys over Snoke? Wat Tambor, very, very similar to Snoke. Resource over the disrupt, 1 indirect over 2, and then your trade-off is an ability. You play a support, your first support around, you can power action in, get to use the die in additional time. So like, using the die additional time, does it equate to the value of Snoke pumping a die by 2? Maybe not. But like, Wat Tambor is also very good. So like, that comparison is just much more linear. If we look at like Watto, we look at like Jabba, but like Jabba's the weaker to me of that trio. Primarily just because Wat makes the extra die, has 4 phenomenal sides. Snoke has technically like 3 to 5 phenomenal sides. The disrupt comes into play quite often. The 2 indirect does as well. You'd actually be surprised how much that 2 indirect does matter. Maybe not round 1, but like 2, 3, 4. Like, that's when hitting for extra 2 somewhere is huge, especially since his ability doesn't require his die. And then like Watto's die just can't be touched by events. So like, just think of like how much of a pain in the ass Vader was, and we're like, all right, well, we'll just have to remove the die twice, or use shit like suppressive fire, because it doesn't do it on our turn, or healing, to kind of bypass it. No, Watto's is just a big pain in the ass. Like, doubt and things like that don't even work, because it says opponent's events as opposed to like by your opponent. So you can't even like doubt it and have them choose to remove it. Like, they could choose to remove it with doubt, and then it'll fail because it's your event having them remove it, and then it just doesn't work. So yeah, it's rough. Whereas like, if we're looking at any of the whatever other support characters coming out, it's always going to be constantly looked at like, all right, well, is it better than Wat? Is it better than Snoke? Do I want Watto here instead? Like, so there'll be situations where Jabba makes more realistic sense, but it's really hard to justify stuff over Snoke and Wat Tambor, to be honest with you. You can definitely justify over Watto, unless you're a ramp deck. But anyways, so like that's one version. Do you remember the old days? If you were around Ancient Lightsaber, Shoto, why would we run any other 2-drop in melee decks? We want Ancient Lightsaber. This thing's ridiculous. So like, it causes you to deck build in a more confined constraint, and that, while it's not being problematic on its own, it does frustrate some people. So like, there's that level of stuff, right? I'm trying to think. Like, Force Storm isn't played in every deck, so that one doesn't kind of, you're stuck with constraints because this card is so good, you're just always going to run this. But like, Vader's Fist, if your deck has any sort of Like ramping, you're in your blue for villain, you're running Vader's Fist. If you have, you know, red, you have some leaders, you can ramp a bit, you're running Mega Blaster Troopers. You're running yellow, shit, even if you can't even ramp that well, you still might run fucking Entourage. Like, that's how good the card is. And it's just kind of one of those things where, like, it's the more cards we have like that, the not like kind of like less, you know, engineering that goes on to deck building, or like less uniqueness. It's just in general, like, you're starting, you know, many decks or archetypes with this like 14 to 20 card shell damn near. Like, any ramp deck I'm playing, it's Rainbow, it's probably going to be like Entourage, Mega Blaster Fist, you know, Fickered and or hired muscles. And it's like, oh, well, how many cards do we have there? 9. Oh, well, let's go to the events. And you're just like, Sinister Piece, Doubt, Hidden Motive, Forsaken. And it's just like, all right, well, you know, how many cards are we at now? And it's just like, oh, 17. It's like, what the fuck? And it, like, that's before we get to like flanks and shit like that. So like, we're already looking at decks that are pretty much like filled out for the most part. Just because some of these cards are just so much better than others. Like, Lat Gunship, prior to the nerf, it was just a fucking broken ass combo. But like, let's say Kez just never had the 2 focus on it, right? It's like, alright, well, you know, this card's not too bad. Or, was it Star Viper? Like, they have some play to them. And when you compare them to the other 3, you're just like, well, why the fuck would I ever run this card? Like, you wouldn't. It just doesn't make sense. Like, if there's something there with synergy and like, alright, well, I want an armored reinforcement of vehicle, these things are vehicles, like, okay, well, this makes sense. But then, like, we had a bunch of removal hate that was just vehicle targeted. And then it's like, well, you know, if I don't want any of this shit to work against vehicles, then I'm just not going to run vehicles. Sure, you don't get to run mods, but like, mods were just kind of undercosted upgrades for the vehicle. If you had a way to get a vehicle out and protect it, you were fine. But, you know, they had issues with Flames of the Past and Vandalize and won. So it's like, oh, okay, this is, you know, this is feasible. But when none of those motherfuckers are vehicles, they're just straight up all supports. The only card that, like, was drastically different, I guess, is, like, Dismantle. Because I believe it's Dismantle. It's the one that's, like, 0 cost. You can pay resources equal to a support and kill it. So, like, you can't mod up the vehicle. Like, a vehicle you'd mod up and then that card's dead. But you can't mod up regular support. So it's like, alright, well, like, I get access to this card, I lose pretty much some of the better ones in the format. Like, you can't do crazy shit with like Hijack now, or I think you can't do it with Hijack. Don't quote me on that one. Dogfight required, I believe, a vehicle though. But anyway, so like, it's just like, why would you run anything else? And it's like, all right, well, you know, you want to have good cards for you know, whatever specific archetype. So it's like, all right, well, you know, support based decks, and it's like, well, it's only one of them in each of the colors, and it's like, realistically, that's accurate. But most support-based decks are going to be, you know, 3-wide because they need extra health and go longer. Ramp-based decks. And for me, I'm just fucking always running Rainbow for the most part, because, like, I just always need the extra options. So, like, when you tend to see, like, a 2-color 3-wide deck, it's just because there's more specific things they need for one of the colors. You know, multiple Jedis, you need multiple yellow characters for, like, easy pickings and tangles. But even then, it, like, boils down to, like, oh, well, what Buster cards do we have? Oh, these ones. What do they require? This shit. Let's run it. But yeah, so like, the debate's very understandable there for, you know, cards kind of crushing deck building options. And like, that's really tough and tragic. But like, so let's go back to the debate between like nerf, broken, like nerf, ban, you know, etc. So like, Snoke got a nerf, right? And a lot of people stopped using him for a bit because that nerf cut off pretty much all of his 2 character pairings of the 17-13s. And it's like, alright. And then his 3-wide pairings were still like okay, but like they didn't have anything to do. Because like our supports at the time were, you know, not amazing. They were very expensive. They took a while to, you know, get their value back. Anyone that was following around the Nationals meta, or the U.S. Nationals meta of last, like, I was playing Snoke, Bazine, First Order Stormtrooper, and I had 5 dice, and I would, like, rip apart people's hands. But, like, when I made money, I had to play, like, an Arc, or, well, a 3-drop Arc, or, like, a Fang Fighter, and I'm getting, like, 2 to 3 damage off of this 3-cost thing. So like I have to super ramp just to have like permanent 2 or 3 damage, which isn't realistically very great. So like there's a whole big thing. But now we're looking at like, oh, here's a fucking Vader's Fist. Here's 5. Oh, I rolled semi-decently. Take like 9. Take 7. I'll take 7 and 2 shields. I'll disrupt you for 3, which is probably really only hitting like 2. And I'm going to do like 3 indirect and 3 base damage, maybe for a resource or something like that. You're just like, oh, well, that's fucking great. For 5, the card damn near paid for itself right away. And then you're using it twice around after. Mega Blaster, same thing. Like, if Mega Blaster comes out and it gets you, like, a resource and 4 damage, you're just like, oh, or even, like, it's 3 damage and a resource. You're just like, all right, well, you know, half of it's paid for now, half of it's paid for next round. Just pure profit. Entourage has a fucking 2 resource side. It can actually pay for 2/3 of itself right a fucking way. The special, if it hits for, like, 3 or 4, boom, you're just murdering people now. Entourage is probably the weaker of the trifecta by itself as far as like output wise, but the fact that it can fucking tutor itself or fickle or hired muscle is like, oh, hey everybody, get in here. It's like fucking Grim Patron, man. It's just like, oh, well, let me play this and let me play the next one, and here's the third guy, it's fickle, hired muscle, whatever, and then you're just like, wait a second, why the fuck are we looking at like another Mega Blaster or Vader's Fist? Like, and the dilemma is that targeted removal really doesn't work well here, because you're gonna stop like 2 or 3 damage like normal, and they've gotten, you know, 2 or 3 dice out of this shit. So it's just like, oh, okay, this is a real struggle. So like the support based decks are just in a real strong place because of that. It is lightly raining, so you will hear wipers occasionally. I'm sorry. So like it's tough there because that trifecta is just like fucking amazing. And realistically, I don't know how they print some of this shit. I saw Entourage and was just like fucking damn near jizzing myself, like, oh my god, this is amazing. And it's like, I did the same thing when I saw Snoke. I was like, dude, this is ridiculous. This guy's gonna be great. The question is like, what pairings? You know, you have to sit there and figure stuff out and play test. And what we found out was making money was really good, really, really good. The problem was we didn't have anything to do with it. Then we started getting things to do with it, and that was problematic. So yeah, it's just, in theory, we should probably just get rid of Snoke to kind of open up building. Like, sure, if a ramp deck wants to go and play Entourage, Mega Blaster, Fist, like, that's fine, but they're gonna pretty much be required to use 2 dice. You know, you're going to have to, you know, maybe get a Waddle +2 or a Jabba +2 and pair it with like a base 1 somewhere to get 3 to get to 5 to play Vader's Fist. You know, Snoke being able to just have Waddle roll out with 1/3 of the die, just going, we're gonna Snoke that. We're at 5. Here's a Vader's Fist. You're just like, oh shit. Here's an Entourage. I have 2 left. You know, if they've already cleared the path, get 2 resource. I'm back up to 4. Here's another Entourage. Here's a Fickle. And you're just like, well, they've gained 3 dice in this round. I'm looking at my 2 resources, and I probably got 2 damage out of this. Like, the aggro decks aren't really that shitty like that in comparison, but if, you know, it's just like we went to a higher threshold this most recent set. We're often looking at like round 3, like game overs, not even just like, all right, I killed the guy, you know, round 2, and we're, you know, we're good. Like, sometimes you're dying round 1, or like your main guy's dying round 1. If you saw any part of the GQ in the finals where it was like Saw Padme versus Snoke, Watto, Faust, you would have seen the biggest negative playing experience when you go to a tournament ever. Grandpa Jake was playing on Padme Saw, and I absolutely adore Snoke, Watto, Faust, and realistically, that's the deck I've been on, according to our Discord, for forever. Just been building it, and like I go and I play with other stuff just to make sure that I can, you know, give the patrons other stuff, but like that's my deck, man. Like, I love that thing. And dude just he hits a fist, 3 range, boom. Rolls out the second time, 3 range, boom. Right when you see the second 3 range, and you know that Grandpa Jake doesn't have removal, you know his Saw is dead, because there's a Faust there, and there was a 2 focus. So it's like, boop, 3rd die, 2 focus, 3, 2 gets off the table, and it's just like, oh shit, like, he literally just lost the fucking game round 1. like, sure, both his guys weren't dead. He wasn't coming back from that. There's a Vader's Fist, and he has a Padme with, like, 2 shields. So it's like 12 health Padme doing indirect versus, like, a 20... Was it 9, 11, 7, 27? He smoked once 26. So let's say he smoked the second time 25 health deck. With the Vader's Fist already in play. Let alone whatever they're going to get next round. So, next round, some dice got controlled. Padme took like half health. Round after that, she's dead. It was game over. Dude lost round 1. Shit wasn't pretty. Whatever, it happens. Like, you know, the same thing in theory could happen. Saw goes in specials twice for like 6 and 5. Padme hits for like a 3 indirect, and you've taken 14 indirect damage. You've taken half your health for even a 3-wide deck, and he can kill you next round. But like, that one's much harder. You can actually mitigate the dice. You can, you know, eat the focus or whatever. You can't really stop Watto's resource side from going and getting +3. And like, if you saw the Palp game, it was like round 2, I want to say. Snoke Watto's discard, boom, hand's gone. Here's a bunch of damage at your dude, he's dead. It's like, oh shit. Like, you can't even mitigate the dice now. But like, it's just, I think Watto's effect is realistically the thing there that's making the deck go absolutely insane. If let's say we swap that to just not be able to be stopped by, like, events could remove it, the trouble wouldn't be nearly the same. Like, the Trinity would be very, very good. You'd still be doing, like, you'd still be shit afraid of stuff, but you'd only have to stop 2 dice. You stop both side partners' dice from being a resource and him snoking him, and for the most part, you're good to go. But because of that whole thing with you can't, you know, use the event on it unless you threaten some other thing, like Ceresu doesn't work there. You can do like Sith teachings on the blank. What was it, like, whatever the hell that yellow scoundrel card is that can mitigate a die. But it's just it's tough, man. But so that's not me just saying that's the best deck in the format. That's just me trying to talk about, like, you know, quote unquote broken things. So like, if parts of that puzzle are missing, things become much easier to cope with. So it's kind of like there's the internal dilemma there is, you know, if my understanding of the fact that people just didn't understand what Snoke was going to be like when they made him, then he kind of made all of the stuff topple, because a lot of this stuff just wouldn't be nearly as viable or feasible, you know. But anyways, so going back to like broken needs nerf, whatever, like realistically they should probably just hit Snoke to kind of prevent or just, you know, reopen up the field as far as like decks that you could play. But there would be some other stuff that would have to get clipped also. So Force Storm, the card itself is technically not broken by itself. Even with Palp, it's still technically not really broken enough. The dilemma comes in is that Palp has a 2 focus side, and then you're seeing the common pairing with Wat Tambor, who also has 2 focus sides. So what it changes it into is like, oh, did I get Force Storm? Did I find a single 2 focus? And do you not have 2 pieces of mitigation? Because that's realistically all it really requires. Because the die comes out, you use a 2 focus, you're going to flip one other die to 2 focus, you're going to flip the Force Storm to a special, you'll stop. They'll do the special, hit you for 1, roll it back out. Now here's the thing you got to remember. They're 1 and 6 to have the special come back up. So let's say they do this 3 times. We're looking at like 41% for the special to come up. It's only 4 out of 10 times, so it's not a ton. But if you do the special 4 times, you're looking at like 50-50. So like, if it comes up that additional half a time, we've gotten a ton of extra damage. So like, let's not count round 1, but let's look at round 2, I guess. Like, you could see a Force Storm round 1, you just won't see the specials like full 5 times round 1, right? So round 1, they do whatever, they're staying alive, you know, relatively healthy. Round 2, they Force Storm, okay? So, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 10 damage. If in theory, you know, they use their 2 resources round 1, use the 2 resources to overwrite into the Force Storm, and used all 4 dice to focus, so you've mitigated Force Storm, let's say once, and didn't have another piece of mitigation, you're looking at 10 damage, and then whatever side the Force Storm pulls up on. But realistically, what might happen is if, let's say, because you have the initial rollout on Force Storm, you would have the 4 sets of focus for the specials after. So you have 5 rolls there, so like 60% or something like that. But you also have the roll for when it comes out again. So there's 7 rolls there at like 16%. So we were at like 50%, we're at like 58, we're at like 65. So it's probably like 73. So like you're realistically going to get that addition, that free special usage. In theory, with 4 focuses, the initial rollout as well as the second initial rollout. Like assuming, you know, this is sans mitigation, because realistically, it's not as simple as, well, if I mitigate it twice, it's fine. It's like, no, if you mitigate it twice every fucking round or you kill Palp, it's fine. Fuck out of here. But anyways, so the overall dilemma is that it's cumulative. If it was like Black One, where you were just getting 1 damage and re-rolling the die in the pool, you'd be like, yeah, whatever, who gives a fuck? But it's the fact that it's cumulative. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, and not even just counting that, like even just going, you know, 1, 2, 3, and then actually smashing a 3 ranged into a guy, dude's dead. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 plus a 3, you've done 13 damage. You've killed shit. So like it's a vast struggle there. And like if you're not a hyper efficient deck, you know, that's gonna cause massive problems. If you took some damage round 1, some more problems. It's just, there's a constant struggle there, with the fact that thing builds, it ramps up too much. So like if that special could max out at 2 damage, it'd probably be more feasible. Like in theory, you'd be like, well, 3 is fine. The dilemma is that like if every round that thing got 3 damage, each of your focus turns into 3 damage, that's almost no differential there. The difference between 3, 4, and 5 isn't super large. And what I mean by that is just because like main target wise. So, you know, if you went 1, 2, 3, 3, then we're already at 9. So then once you ranged after, you're just like, all right, well, that's 12. That's most things anyways. So the difference between like 12 and 13 isn't super large. Sure, against a 3-wide deck, once you've clipped that first guy, and now you're hitting for 4, 5, 6, like it'll be like 4, 5, that guy's dead, 6 in a 2, that guy's dead, or 6 in a 3, that guy's dead. So like it makes it easier on that end. But 3 would be kind of a struggle there. You want to make the die still good enough for the overall kind of like usage. You know, if you could focus into it and get 2 damage and still get the reroll on it, like that's still quite good. But like being able to get 3s is probably at the upper limit. Palp is very susceptible to aggressive decks and damage, so it's not that the card needs to, you know, Force Storm needs to just get, you know, nerfed into oblivion. It's just the fact that it does cause a negative experience, and the overall dilemma is that you want to try to curb as many super negative experiences as possible. So like they want to make strong cards, but they said strong cards kind of need to be strong like in a I carried the whole game on my own because I had some assistance from this other thing. It's just it's realistically that Palp can pull the die back out. If Palp had some other ability, I don't know, abilities cost -1 to play onto him, and he got the 1 health or something, then he'd probably still be shit ridiculous. We used to be looking at crazy Bactas and fucking fatal blows. But like it'd be a much harder concept. He'd have to draw a bunch of cards to get a bunch of abilities to then do this stuff and still have money. The Force Storm thing is just a much easier thing to do with the focus sides. Or I don't know, something along those lines. There's just different scenarios. In general, anytime we're getting extra dice, you have to be very, very cautious because, you know, what those dice can give us. So like Wat Tambor with Vader's Fist doesn't do anything. You know, Wat Tambor with Mega Blaster Trooper just gives you, you know, that one die once. It's not super amazing. But like if, let's say, planetary bombardments were really easy to get down, you know, copying planetary bombardments is a much scarier concept. And it's really just based on, you know, the different types of synergy and different things that are going, so it's problematic. My honest feelings are that they should potentially do something just to lower that negative aspect with Palp. If you still want 4-storm combos to be super viable, limit it to 3 resources. Limit to 2 is realistically more fair, but the card probably couldn't be played outside of Palp. I guess at that point, the theory there is just that, you know, you get the special and get the free damage. They could make it just straight up 2 flat instead of like the 1 then, you know, ramping up. But anyways, that's that. Probably not seeing nerfs or bans anytime soon, but they are going to be monitoring a lot of the stuff. But so the big thing is like we have to just really gauge, like, do we want to nerf stuff so that things are more fair, or do we want it so that people have less negative experiences? And like, there are many negative experiences that can come up in the game, and like the die rolling thing's not one of them. Like, people that are just struggling with the die roll, you're either screwing up the way your deck's constructed, not paying attention to other stuff, or maybe your die is actually shitty. But there tends to be more things than just, oh, I rolled bad. This game's terrible because it's luck based. It's not. There's so little luck in comparison to what you'd expect, especially in most other games, that you'd actually be surprised. There is luck there, but not at the rate that you'd hear a lot of people complain and cry about. But in general, we do have several problem cards. The ones I would probably say are the most problematic are ones that let you either ramp too easily. So like you have this kind of like multi-dimensional thing. Like either one of these 2 things needs to go. We either need to not be able to ramp so crazy fast, or the cards that are coming out kind of support-wise need to not be insanely good. One of the 2. You can't ramp crazy efficiently right from the beginning of the game, and then also give you crazy damage stuff right from the beginning of the game. Like the entire point between like having character dice with damage is that you started with said damage. So you're gonna be focusing primarily on damage, killing guys, and that's that. You'll build up very slowly additional dice. Ramp-based decks are just like, all right, well, I'll make a bunch of money, play stuff that doesn't go away, and does a bunch of damage, and hopefully I can get it, you know, round 1 going for some tight damage. Like if you're playing, let's say, Wat, and I don't know, a Jawa or something, or a Battle Droid, whatever. Your damage really doesn't exist, so you have to get them from all your supports. So, you know, you get a Mega Blaster round 1, you're just like, alright, well, cool, well, you know, I have some damage online. And, like, that's fine. But being able to do, like, multiple entourages, and then, like, Mega Blasters round after round just to put you at a damage that's higher equivalent to aggro. So then, like, half of those damage characters just kind of don't matter. And that's, like, not very good for the game, or, you know, things in general. But like that's a little bit more easier to interrupt. Watto, I guess you can't really interrupt so much, but you could at least like eat the Wat die to prevent like focus on Watto, or even just, you know, mess up stuff in hidden mode. The Snoke thing is actually just too good though, but too good with stuff that, you know, dice you can't touch. I'm trying to think. So what else was there that was like NP? Mill. So mill cards are fine. Or, before the set, mill cards were fine. Like, the 4-speed into Commando Raid thing was quite ridiculous. But, like, I've been waiting for Commando Raid to be fucking playable since, like, the first set. They just always printed red guys with pretty much single discard sides. So you really didn't have 2 sides. And then we didn't have, like, 2 discard side. A 2 discard side. So it's just like, alright, well, this isn't realistically good enough. Then they made Leia 2, and everything changed because now we had a legit Commando Ray deck. You had 4 speed, so you had, you know, hit and run into, oh, look, your hand's gone. And like that's a real negative playing experience. But you didn't lose the game just straight up to doing that. If it was round after round, then yeah. I don't know if they just want to power curve a lot of the stuff we're seeing, or if the designers just don't really understand, you know, what's going on kind of math-wise for some of the stuff. Because like when Force Illusion came out, right? On our side, the theory was that shields had to pop first, and then you could Force Illusion. So Force Illusion wasn't actually very good. And then, you know, we had the whole Vibro Knife thing, so Force Illusion was still like okay, but Vibro Knife like cut it down, so you didn't even like really worry about it. Then they pretty much nerfed the Vibro Knife, which gave Force Illusion a lot of power, a lot more power than it had, and it started raining more now, so sorry. Gave it a lot more power than it had, so like other cards got better. Caution became amazing back then. Caution was shitty when Vibro Knife was floating around because there were just a lot of melee decks. So like you shielding up really just wasn't relevant versus those decks, and you would get shredded. So like a lot of time it's just like, you know, them making changes somewhere along the line does screw up a bunch of other things, which is problematic. But like we could get a rotation of, you know, the legacy block and still not be in an okay place because Entourage Mega Blaster is still going to exist. So like the support-based ramp decks are still going to have Wat Tambor, Watto, Entourage, Mega Blaster, and then, you know, whatever new stuff came out. So like that's going to be, you know, a constant problem. Phasma though is very good at getting damage out, and since Snoke would be gone, you know, we're looking at 9 health guys instead of 11. 9's much easier to get into, and, you know, potentially kill fast enough. Phasma does put out very solid damage, but at the same time, Phasma's a problem as well. And you might be like, what? Here's the dilemma. It all boils down back to kind of ruining mitigation, I guess as I'd say it. So Phasma puts out 4 dice on her own, gets 1 partner for 1, or puts out 3 and gets a partner for like 2. In theory, that's fine, but now we're looking at kind of like that 5-die deck, and 5-die decks were kind of always like this thing where you got 5 dice, but you have really low health, because you have these like 8 or 9 health characters, right? Snoke was that guy that kind of broke the mold, because he got that 11th health, and he was only 13 points, and it was just like, wait, what? But Phasma now, we're looking at a 12 health guy with 4 dice. So, you know, if we can kind of like defend for Phasma, so that Phasma just won't get like immediately clipped, you're gonna have your 5 dice. If they're averaging 1 damage each and like a 2 damage, you're at you're like 6 damage roughly. So like your aggression's great. It's just like in theory, if we fix a bunch of other problems, then Phasma is also going to technically pop up as a potential issue because of the power she holds on her own. The deck will probably be fine because if we're seeing a bunch of aggro, like, you know, someone can aggro into her. But she is a leader trooper, so she sets up with the Mega Blaster. She sets up Riot Shields for 3, which makes Riot Shield ridiculous there. And there's a lot of support around like the whole trooper dice thing, and enough good stuff for her. Right now, Phasma's just like that, you know, tier 1.5. People still have to figure out like whatever build makes her run the smoothest, and the setup for cards and whatnot. But her damage output's high enough to contend with what's going on. You know, she could go and kill Snoke round 2 or near the top of round 2. The Phasma Sentinel deck has Retribution, so it makes mitigating the character dice much harder, and you have 5 character dice, which is where most of your damage is coming from. you know, you could feasibly see 8 damage come out of that deck, and even if you mitigate, you know, you're probably still taking the 2 from there, so you've taken like 6 or 7. Like it's potentially scary stuff. The Phasma isn't anywhere near the needs to be nerfed mark yet. It's just one of those things that you got to understand. Like, if we get all these other nerfs, you have to look at what else was doing really good at this time, because that's the other shit that's gonna just be like, oh well, everybody else got nerfed, let's go, just me, baby, we got this. And Phasma's right there right now. We're seeing like Phasma decks, Watto decks, Palp decks, Snoke decks. Afra's still, you know, kind of teetering around. She's like somewhere in the background. The dilemma is kind of figuring out what list works properly, and the fact that indirect doesn't get you a kill. And since we're looking at these pretty much combo-based crazy damage output coming, you know, decks running around, it's a real struggle for her, because she can't go and just be like, oh, I'm gonna focus down Palp and kill him. Like, she just has to put out so much damage that Watt dies, and then you kill Palp after. The Snoke decks have like 25 health, so you know they have to survive that shit. And like, she's very well possible because she's essentially a 14 cost like 3 character die. You know, essentially her 3rd character dies is that resource for a droid every round. So like, there's stuff around there. Like, she's considerably, you know, busted in the grand scheme of things, but for the most part, because of indirect and the deck being like predicated around it, it's much more stomachable, because you didn't lose like your main guy round 1. You know, you didn't take damage, 10 damage to 11 damage to the main guy, and then he's dead. So like, I don't know, it's all over the place. But the rain got worse. I really don't want to put you guys through a bunch of the wiper shit, but just kind of like see where your stance is on the whole broken thing. Like, is it that you think the cards aren't broken enough because there's other broken stuff that can fight with it, so it's fine? That's normally where I'm at. And like, I just want like really strong games. I'm fine with games ending round 3 like that. I don't really like games ending round 1. So like, I don't know. Even if there was some rule where if your guy was going to die round 1, he survived with 1 health instead, I think that would be better, because at least you get a chance to do stuff, you know? Into round 2, you can try to heal up, survive, whatever. It's just like that dude dying round 1 is fucking putrid. It like, it's not flashbacks of FN, but like, if you remember FN, like, if FN fought Poe and killed Poe round 1, that game was done. If Poe went over and like thermaled you twice round 1, that game was pretty much done. Your guys didn't actually die there, so you could actually fight back and kill Poe after taking thermals twice. But for the most part, that game was a fucking travesty. And it's just like, those things are the ones that you have to be like concerned about. You know, Phasma's 5 dice. There's a lot of 2s there. You can control one of them and still take a bunch of damage, and that's why I was mentioning that's a relatively large concern. Kylo, you know, has always been a concern against like mono type decks, because he got that additional damage. So then he was matching up with Phasma, but then it was like, all right, well, if you're playing like against like support Rainbow, he doesn't output fast enough. So it's like, all right, you know, there's the thing going in there with specific matchups, but he does, if he's like popular at a time, he prevents monocolor decks from really seeing play. So like, to say there was a bunch of, you know, mono red Phasma, Trooper, Advanced Training running around, like tons of it, you'd see Kylo make a comeback, and fucking Phasma decks would be like, this is fucking bullshit. My Phasma took fucking 2, then took 4, and then whatever other guy was helping, maybe fucking Dooku, it took like 4 more, and then at the beginning of the next round, he's like, fucking activate red, killed my guy. This is bullshit. That's a reasonable concern. But like, those guys are essentially like above curve, considered busted in specific situations. It's really something you just gotta, you know, take into consideration. And there's not much we'll be able to kind of do about it, you know? We see nerfs really slowly because of the approval process that things have to go through. Just, I don't know, be considerate, I guess, of your fellow Star Wars Destiny players. I'm not saying don't go play this really good deck. I'm just saying understand where people are often coming from. Like, it can be really frustrating when your main guy dies round 1. You didn't get to really play a game, you know? It can be really frustrating when someone combo kills your entire board game, you know, round 2. FN style. Like, the stuff is a real concern. It could be, like, lower odds, but if you really look at, like, the charts for the percentages and stuff, is it as low as you think it is? Like, are you aware that if you mulligan your 5-card hand, so, like, let's say you see your opening 5, okay, and there's no Force Storm, and you mulligan all 5 back, you don't keep a single card, you're 52% to find a Force Storm by those, you know, 10 looks every game. So 1 in 2 games, you'll start with the Force Storm if you mulligan everything back, besides Force Storm. Like, as in, you didn't find it in the opening, you milled it back. Not like you fucking found it in your opening and threw it back like a jackass. Because I don't know the keywords I should be saying for that. So please don't argue me. But yeah, so you're 52%. So 1 in 2 games, you're going to have a Force Storm as Pal. If you mulled hard for Force Storm. Once you include round 2's 5 cards, your odds jump again, you know? And, like, they're much smaller. I think you're, like, 30% to find it in the opening, 30% to see it again, so you end up being like 52. It's definitely higher than 30% because we're shorter 5 cards now. But let me just do, was it 5 out of 25? I'm just doing short math. This is not the actual math on how to do it. 5 out of 25, so it's 1/5. It should be more than 20%. Was 1 out of 25, it's 4%. I don't know. I'm just going to use the 30% again. Fuck it. If you get another 30% clip at it, you know, we're looking at like 66. So 2 out of 3 games, you should see it by round 2. If you've mulled hard. And round 2 is when he's expecting to play it. It's not like Sith Holocron, where you needed to really find it round 1, because round 2, if you found it and then they just mitigate it, you fucking crap yourself. But it's just something to keep in consideration. So, like, and that's just using 30% as the mark. It's definitely not 30%. I'm just trying to think, like, how we got to 52 in the numbers. The numbers are real fucking shitfest to look at. But I was pretty sure it was 30 for the first 5. It ended up being 52 after the second 5. So the third 5 would have higher numbers than the 30%. But it would be, what? You lost the 1/6, 20%. I don't know what the jump up is, but it's probably realistically at like 70. Probably no more than 75%. So 3 out of 4 games. And, like, that's good enough. They do have access to Force Wave. So, you know, potentially hitting Force Wave multiple rounds, while it's not the same as Force Storm. If you do get to use it once around and, you know, bash extra damage in, like, you can come onto the game okay, and just, like, play defensive. But that's life, man. Like, that's the percentages. The math behind it's not too bad. What else is there? So, like, there was some other stuff I wanted to talk about. Oh, no answers. So, Mill, sorry. No answers is fucking ridiculous. Not from, Mill's too good, I don't want Mill to be good, blah, 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 nah, fuck you. It's just, resource cost-wise. It's just too good. Like, so think of Bespin Wingard, okay? Bespin Wingard's a fucking 1-cost support, and then you gotta pay 1 to discard 1. And it's like, well, you know, when your support costs 1, they make the ability better. It's like, yeah, but you're paying 1 to discard 1 each round, okay? So let's say we look at this as like Dex Diner's version. You pay 1 to heal 1, but if you have 6 or more damage, then you heal 2. So if you have 6 or more damage, just become a field medic. And if not, it's a fucking shitty rejuvenate. So it's like, alright, so let's say we assume it's always, you know, field medic, that's the high end, and rejuve for the thing. So if we call it like 1.5 health for 1 resource, it's like, alright, well, you know, that's feasible, because like the normal standard is 1 health for 2 resources. So 1.5 health makes sense because your card stayed in play and you get to continue to do it. So with no answer, you're like, all right, well, damage wise, right? We've always looked at, 1 card and 1 resource for 2 damage. When you look at discards, it's like, okay, Scruffy is 1 cost and 1 resource. You name the card, you peek, and you pull. So it's like, all right, the ability to kind of peek is a relevant thing, like a relevant number. For no answer, I actually don't remember if it's randomly discard or if your opponent gets to pick. And like that matters a little bit or quite a bit, but the dilemma is in the mill 3 after. So essentially, it provided that you get the correct circumstances for it, okay? Which is that your opponent is down to 0 or 1 card, or for max value, it's 1 card. 0 cards is just for the 3 mil, all right? So let's say they get into that situation. You have now gone and done 4 mil damage for 1 resource and 1 card. Now, strength through weakness costs 3 and mills your opponent 4. Think about it. 3. Cost 3 in a card to do 4 mil damage. So we'd be like, all right, well, that's... Is it considered overcosted? Probably not. Only because, like, the 1 for 2 was what we were looking for, and then it was often 2 for 3, 3 for 4. Mobilize cost 3, get you 4 resources. No Mercy would cost you 2 in your hand to get 4 resources. 4 damage, sorry. My Ally would essentially do 3 damage because it costs 2, because that's what you kind of had to do it with. Like, sure, you could do it for less, but you wouldn't run it if it could only hit 2s. Essentially in that concept, Fear and Deadman essentially was like, do an extra 3 or 4 damage, but if they were 3 wide, then you'd get the 6 to 8. And that's when it was like a blowout, right? So yeah, I made it sound like I was going to end, and I just kept talking, because that's just how I do. I'm sorry. Trying to think. Yeah, so no answer is actually just really above curve. And they probably shouldn't have done that. For them to go more like there's a niche scenario, the card needed to be like 1 for 3. So I guess the theory there was that they would think, okay, the opponent would have no hand, they'd pay 1 and mill 3. The problem is that the discard portion is actually much higher value than milling actual cards, because you're doing something immediately. So if you hit the last card and you milled 3, it was like a straight blowout. Like, people ran clandestine operation to try to mill like 3 cards, and they had to do it in very specific situations. So like them adding the discard side, not requiring spot colors or a specific character, 2 of a fucking color, it's just like, what? And like, you can't go and think like, well, it discards a card and then might not mill 3, because the odds aren't really fucking high for that to not mill the 3. 1, you probably just wouldn't cast it. 2, you're not playing that in a damage-based deck. So realistically, the only decks you're playing it are the ones where you're discarding from your opponent's hand. 3, your opponent would probably play a card or 2 and like pitch 1 to reroll. So like they're already in that situation where they're already low. Mill often only has to like discard 2 cards from hand to feasibly get rid of someone's entire grip, assuming that they did their plan. When Mill can discard more cards than that, they completely usually messed up the normal plan. When they can't mill anything is when your opponent got to do whatever the fuck they want. But the card's actually just quite strong, as it being essentially 1 for 4, 1 for 3 in the worst case scenario. That card definitely should have only gotten milled 2 at the second portion, or had a then effect. But like, I think you can discard a card from your opponent's hand and them have no card to discard, even if it did it then. Not 100% sure on the specification behind that, but the mill portion probably should have been 2, especially when we start to include things like resistance ring or the ability to like pull it back. Lore said Tech is not a complete pullback, but if there's options like 2 no answers and whatever other card, and you're not already like decked out, you're probably giving them whatever the other card was. You can't really afford to lose a card and mill 3, or even just mill 3 for 1. But yeah, so like when that deck is another negative playing experience from that regard. And like the weird part there is just because the deck's going to be super defensive about what's going on. Control decks have always been a negative playing experience for people that want to play cards and push damage. So like it's few and far between, but like it does feel bad, right? When you can't really play cards, or you play cards and they get blown up, and then you roll out damage and they get blown up, and then you lose your hand and then go to the next round and repeat the same thing over and over. It's kind of like anyone who played like Magic and they got into those situations where you're like land go, now you're like, well, I'm gonna play my big dude, and they're like counterspell that, and then you're like, all right, next round I'll play this guy, and they're like, counterspell that one too. I'll play this guy, counterspell, no, and then you've never resolved anything for like 5 rounds, and you're just like, well, this was fun. And your opponent, if you decide not to play anything, was drawing extra cards, and then they finally play some big fat thing while still having a counterspell to stop whatever the fuck you were doing. That's essentially what we're looking at for mill, except it'll be like, alright, you got to roll some dice, you did like some damage that doesn't matter, I've stopped the things that did matter, killed whatever that did matter, pitched your hand, and threw your deck in the toilet. It's too many cards. It really should probably be limited to like 3. And like I'm only talking about these cards so that you guys can get a better understanding of essentially like these cards are way above curve. Above curve is sure power creep, but then you got to be fucking careful about what essentially would be bitched about, because if you take away some of the cards that are above curve, you're left over with the other cards that are above curve, and then you're still there with the fucking crazy ass format of like, oh, this is still ridiculous shit. So you really got to hit like multiples of them all at once. But like at the same time, we don't want a bunch of fucking erratas for new players to be like, all right, here's this fucking encyclopedia, check in here if your shit's changed. Nerfing some events and like supports and stuff in theory is far easier than nerfing team lineups, because you can play a card and then find out you're getting like kind of less damage and not feel so bad. It feels bad when you walk into a fucking tournament though and your fucking team's illegal. You have no idea how many times I've had to tell people, I'm like, oh yeah man, sorry bro, that Phasma, you can't run it with Kylo both elite. Like, yeah, you got another 2-player starter deck, but she got nerfed, man, sorry bro, your team's legal, you gotta run with 1 die. People coming in with like Kylo FN, it's like, oh yeah, FN only does it once per round and your team's illegal because the dude had cost 15 now. I think he's 14 now maybe. But it's like, oh, okay, awesome. Fuck. We made it with time to spare, guys. I don't know. Shit's a fucking fest. Some shit is a bit too broken in comparison to the other stuff. So, like, I feel for those people that get fucking ruined. But if you're that guy trying to play fucking Gungans and you're complaining about Fear and Deadmen, go to hell. Anyone wondering, that's a fucking Facebook thing. Gandork had talked about fucking wanting to run Ewoks in Fear and Deadmen, killing all the 4 health Ewoks. But he was really just trolling because people were complaining about Force Storm. And like, I think the Force Storm complaint is rightfully so. Not maybe in the regard that people tend to put it in. But it does, if you do that special a bunch of times and kill somebody, it's like, okay, that's not right. If it was like Black One only did 1 damage off of it, so like the odds of hitting it 5-6 times in a row just really wasn't happening. But if you're focusing a bunch and you've just natural hit that special like twice, some dude's dying right there, if not everybody. Because each of those specials is like monumentally amazing in the grand scheme of things. And like the realistic dilemma of having to control the die twice is a pain in the ass. As a heads up, so if you're playing against that deck, okay, round 1 they ramp and they hit the Force Storm. If they can't do it a bunch of times, like 4 or 5, you may not want to control the die. Here's the reasoning. Let's say you take 5 damage from it, or 6 damage from it round 1. You're still okay. If your guy has like 12, 13 health, you're still fine. Round 2, they'll have all their focuses available. So if you've held the mitigation, like a solid 2 or 3 of them probably, and you eat the Force Storm twice, they have to pretty much rely on Palp's 2 damage. They may have gotten another upgrade or whatever, but the likelihood of your guy dying there is very low. You only have that fucking round to do what you gotta do to fucking either claw back or kill that bitch. But there's a differential between controlling the die round 1 and controlling it round 2. If you have 2 mitigation round 1, you probably want to let him focus into the special, then control the die, just to limit the number of times, but then still hold the second piece of mitigation for the next time. Because if they've ramped off of, let's say, like a logistics, and then they've burned a focus, they're probably only hitting that special twice. So then you're okay there, taking like the 3 damage from it, and then you go into the next round and you eat it twice, so that they can't use all the focus. Because if you, let's say you mitigate it once, right, and then they pull it out the second time, and they're gonna do the special twice, and you mitigate it again, and now you miss the second mitigation in the next round because you have to draw, you know, pretty much your 5 fucking cards trying to find it. Then what'll happen is each of those focus sides is going to become the rest of the damage. So now you're going to be seeing the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now your guy's dead. Whereas if you had let them do it like the 2 times round 1, and then actually successfully mitigated it twice round 2, your guy survived. So something to just kind of keep in consideration. Against Snoke, you realistically pray to God you have disrupt sides on your main dice. Even a single disrupt can do more damage than you'd expect. A single disrupt makes it really, really hard to play Fist round 1. You might be thinking, well, like, they can still play Entourage or Mega Blaster. Just think of your replacement opportunity. If that die for you is going to get like 3 damage or something, you probably can't resolve that single disrupt. If the die was only going to get like 1 damage or a shield, take your disrupt, resolve it straight into them. Even if they have like a Mega Blaster Trooper, they can't resolve the 2-for-1 anymore, unless they find a resource somewhere. So then, like, you're fine with that trade-off of a resource and a 2-for-1 to get 2 damage, because each of those dice have now done 1. But if you leave them with the resource, and then they get the fist down or something, you're gonna be like, shit. If the Mega Blaster comes out, it's much lower damage, so you're still like, it's not amazing for you, but you're like, okay. If they hit the Entourage, they now have to hit the 2 resource side to play the second Entourage. So their options here are to go Entourage into like a Fickle, and like, still not amazing for you, but you've softened the blow. Or be able to mitigate the 2 resource side if they focus to it, so that the second Entourage doesn't come down. You really won't have stopped their deck from working, but you've hampered it enough. And like, you got to be super aware of these things, because like, if you're not, you're just like, oh, well, this motherfucker got like 5 resources, like, I'm dumb no matter what. And it's just like, no, you're not done. Like, it's important to keep that in consideration, especially if like a 2 damage on a Faust or something. Like, try to see what they're coming out with, because if they have the focus and they like chain machine gun these supports on you, you're probably actually done, because you're not going to be able to mitigate it every round. But if you disrupt, you know, maybe you quote unquote mitigated it for that round at least, and that could be the difference between like winning and losing. Like, if I can't fist and I have to wait till the next round, like, sure, I still get my 3 resolutions and I have the ability to pay for it now. But I'll have lost the other potential of 2 more resolutions. Whether it's get me some shields, 3 in direct, whatever it is, it adds up. So that's what I have for you guys as far as that concerns. When it comes to Phasma, if you're playing against the mono red version, mitigate 2s, jam damage into her. You got to get her off the table. You're going to have to pretty much race. If you're playing against the Retribution version, mitigating a 2 does still stop 1 damage, so don't feel so bad about it. Getting in damage, I think, is a little harder versus them, but you tend to have a little more time. So, do what you can about stuff. kind of go from there. But good luck. Deuces.